Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at classicstoday.com. You know, I was sort of hanging around browsing through Amazon.com, which I'm wont to do periodically, just to see what's out there and what's available and if there's new stuff, and checking out some, major artists to see how quickly things are getting deleted, which is kind of amazing, although Amazon really is no longer evidence of anything that's possibly available. There are many better options now, and you know what they are. So, but I noticed, and it shocked me to death, that this was still available. Herbert Blomstedt, the San Francisco years. This is a 15-disc retrospective of his tenure in San Francisco, and it's really, really, really good. So I wanted to go through the box and show you what's there, and just encourage any of you who don't have Blomstedt's San Francisco stuff and who might be curious to grab it while you can, because it can't possibly be around much longer. I mean, if it's going to be, but at least we'll be able to talk about a lot of performances. And looking at this box, I was struck by how many recordings were already recommended and some of the repertoire features that we've done. I mean, Blomstedt is a very unassuming guy, very humble and not very demonstrative, but he's very musical and he makes really, really, really good records. He's kind of like a fungus. I mean, he grows on you in a good way, of course, not in a bad way. He's a happy fungus, but wow, can he make music? And his tenure in San Francisco was arguably his and one of that orchestra's golden age, in a sense. I mean, they've been doing fabulous things under Michael Tilson Thomas too. When I was living in San Francisco, they had Edo de Waard was the conductor, and he was good too. I mean, they were always a wonderful orchestra, and I saw lots and lots of fine concerts. But Blomstedt's tenure was pretty special, and frankly, if Decca were smart, they would take all of their Blomstedt recordings, including the ones he did at the Gewandhaus, and throw them in a box. It's so easy. What could be simpler? Because you'd get some really fantastic things in a box. I mean, just as, what they are. You'd have absolutely among the best Sibelius cycles, Nielsen cycles, Richard Strauss tone poems. I mean, there's just great, great stuff in there. And of course, after San Francisco, he went to the Gewandhaus, he made a few records, and then the entire record industry self-destructed, and it was all over. Go figure. So anyway, let's talk about what's in here disc by disc, as we love to do, and we'll see what we can find. First on the list, Bartók, the Concerto for Orchestra, and Kossuth, the symphonic poem. Now, Kossuth is kind of a rarity, and it's really great. I mean, it's been called Bartók's Ein Heldenleben, which it kind of is, except it only takes 20 minutes, which is like, yes. I mean, if Ein Heldenleben only took 20 minutes, we'd really be in business, wouldn't we? But in any case, the Concerto for Orchestra is wonderfully played, and it's absolutely a terrific performance. Next, Beethoven Symphonies 1 and 3. Now, here we have to be a little careful, because although these are very good, very musical performances, Blomstedt's got plenty of these out there. His Beethoven cycle with the Staatskapelle Dresden is one of the great ones, and his Beethoven cycle with the Leipzig Gewandhaus is one of the great ones. So this singleton release is kind of neither fish nor fowl. It's quite good, but if you've got those other ones, you're probably going to like them better, and you'd probably be right to. So, nice try. But he did do Beethoven in San Francisco, so that's sort of evidence of that. So now we know he did it. Okay. A great disc of Berwald, Symphonies 1 and 4. Now, I mentioned this disc when we were talking about Berwald's third, the Symphonie Singulière, and said, gee, isn't it a pity that Blomstedt never got around to doing the rest of them, because this is a great Berwald disc. I've heard one of you kindly commented that Berwald, I mean, Blomstedt's almost as old as Berwald, that Blomstedt had mentioned that he was going to be doing a Berwald cycle now that he's about 185, and, we'll see if he does, and we'll see how much blood is still flowing at the time that he actually does it, if it happens. This is a great, 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 great record. Brahms' German Requiem. This is like my reference recording, this and the Klemperer. So now you know, and I don't have to make a German Requiem video. I may do one anyway. But, I always hated the German Requiem, I have to tell you. But now I love it. It took me time. It took me about 40 years to get into it. But now I think it's absolutely a great piece. But this was the recording that did it for me. This is in Klemperer too, actually. But this really was... this is such an amazing performance. And the reason I think it's amazing is because it is completely devoid of that saccharine sanctimoniousness that makes, like, Carillon insufferable in this piece. The tempos are swift, the playing is gorgeous, the choral singing. The San Francisco Symphony Chorus is one of the great symphony choruses out there. The soloists, Wolfgang Holzmair and Elisabeth Norbert Schultz, are first class. It's just a great performance. But the point is, Blomstedt sort of makes a point of the fact that he's a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever. He's a religious and he's a spiritual guy. And for that reason, he is able to conduct spiritual music without religiosity. In other words, he gives the music the simplicity and eloquence and directness of expression that it really needs, and that I think Brahms absolutely had in mind. He conducts like a believer, not like somebody who's trying to impress you with how religious he can be. And that is a difference. And I know that sounds maybe a little strange, but you hear it. You hear it in his conducting of sacred music. He also did a disc of Brahms choral works, other Brahms choral works, which is first class in every respect. So this is one of the great German Requiems, and you must own it. If you don't, you can get it separately. Oh, look! It's the other Brahms choral music. You see, someone in Decca agreed with me. At least they knew. This is just special stuff. You get the Schicksalslied, the Alto Rhapsody with Jard van Ness, the Begräbnisgesang, now there's a knee slapper, the Nenje, and the Gesang der Parzen, the Song of the Furies, the Fates, whatever the heck those things were. These are also every bit as fine as the German Requiem. It's one of the great discs, and it's a great way to fill out your Brahms collection because, some of these pieces are harder to find. Although, Abbado did a bunch of them superbly well with the Berlin Philharmonic as part of his Brahms symphony cycle. So, this stuff isn't as unfamiliar as it used to be. But to have all these short choral works with orchestra on one disc in such fine performances is really, really helpful. And it just goes to show, just how wonderful Blomstedt was as a conductor and how well put together this set is. Of course, when your legacy with an orchestra consists of almost nothing but great recordings, putting a box together isn't too difficult, is it? Bruckner 4. Okay, Blomstedt is a great Bruckner conductor. This is a really, really, really fine Bruckner Fourth. It doesn't get mentioned in the list of Bruckner Fours. It didn't get mentioned in mine. Most people prefer his Staatskapelle Dresden recording. I like this one better. The horn playing is better. Who are we kidding? It really is great. Oh, this is another great one. Peer Gynt, complete. This is like the reference recording for complete Peer Gynts. What can I say? It's just stupendous, and you get like the choral parts, and there's a speaker part who's billed here as the receiver. Is there a receiver, or do they mean a reciter? I don't know. That seems a little odd. Anyway, it's a great Peer Gynt, absolutely great, and can't do better. Hindemith, Mathis der Mahler, Symphonic Metamorphosis, Trauermusik, and they've added on this one the concert music for strings and brass. Now, Blomstedt's Hindemith recordings were great and really kind of rare because Hindemith was on his way out when these were made. I happen to think his Symphonic Metamorphosis is not as interesting as some of the best ones, for example, like Zell's or Kubelik's or some of those other ones that were out there. But everything else here is just wonderful, and I recommend his Hindemith as highly as I can, except, isn't this getting boring? All this great stuff all in one spot. The Mahler 2. This was on my list of Mahler 2s. It was a sleeper. Blomstedt hasn't done very much Mahler. He recorded the ninth recently in Bamberg. It was not the best. It had its moments, but it wasn't the best. But this Mahler 2 is a smoker. It's on the short list of great Mahler 2s, and it has flown under the radar for years. And it was very, very smart of them to put this in the box because it was the only Mahler that he did in San Francisco, and it was in danger of vanishing forever into the heedless discographic maw of universal music. So thank goodness. Mendelssohn 3 and 4. Lovely, lovely, lovely performances. Again, nobody talks about them because nobody talks about Mendelssohn symphonies anyway. But if I did a list of Mendelssohn 3 and 4, this would probably be on it. It would have to be effortless musicality, complete naturalness, fleet, lively tempos. It has everything going for it and nothing not to love. Okay. This is a no-brainer, Nielsen 2 and 3, and I'm really happy they put this in here and not 4 and 5, because 4 and 5 came first, and they weren't as well recorded as 2 and 3, number one, and Blomstedt's number 4 is a little bit controversial. He does that huge diminuendo at the end of the finale and gives it that sort of autumnal sunset kind of feeling, which Nielsen didn't write and which I don't think the music needs. I'm not a big fan of his number 4, however well realized it really is, but his 2 and 3 are stunning, and the symphonies are less well known. So I think that was a good idea. I really do. I think it was smart to put these in there, and they are wonderful. Next is, oh my gosh. Okay. Carmina Burana, one of the great ones, another one of the great ones with great, great choral singing, terrific soloists, absolutely wonderful in every single possible way and several impossible ways. You've got to have this Carmina Burana if you're a Carmina Burana fan. Some people call it Carmina Burana. Some people call it Carmina Burana. Some people call it Carmina Burana. I don't care. It sounds the same no matter what you call it, and that's one of the great ones. Another interesting choice, Schubert 9, along with the overture in the Italian style. Now, Blomstedt was a great Schubertian. He did a complete Schubert cycle, again with the Staatskapelle Dresden. It's on Brilliant Classics. It's fantastic. The ninth is fantastic, and this ninth is fantastic. Unlike his Beethoven, which I think was a little bit redundant, I think the Schubert ninth holds its own. It holds its own with any of the great ones. Most people don't mention it. Again, it has sort of fallen by the wayside. He also did 5 and 8 in San Francisco, and they are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And this is a good excuse to get the box for some Blomstedt you may not know, along with the Mendelssohn and some of these other ones that were a little bit less known when they came out. The Berwalds, they kind of fell by the wayside. It's nice to have them in the box. It really is. Sibelius 1 and 7, what can we say? He did one of the great Sibelius cycles. Here are 2 great performances from it. They are absolutely first class. Nothing else need be said about it. And finally, last but certainly not least, Richard Strauss, his Alpine Symphony and Don Juan. Now, is this one of the great Alpine symphonies? Yeah, it really is. It is wonderfully recorded. It is wonderfully played. It is another performance that's sort of effortlessly musical. It's not going to blow you out of the back room like some of my favorite ones. My favorite one is you may recall on CD Accord that was made in Poland with Kazimierz Cord conducting. But there are plenty of fine Alpine symphonies out there, and this is one of them. The Don Juan is excellent, absolutely first class, and his Richard Strauss generally was first class. It was first class, again, for its simple, plain-spoken musicality, for its ability to keep the music flowing and moving, and for him always knowing where the tune is, and, what parts should be on top and what parts shouldn't. That's a gift. It's a gift. One of the things I always say about conductors, the great conductors, is they know when to get out of the way. And Strauss is one of those composers where conductors really need to get out of the way. If you've got a great orchestra that can play the music and you can keep them together, you trust your players and you get out of the way, and the music sounds wonderful. And Blomstedt is just the kind of guy, a self-effacing, brilliant musician who knows when he's in the spotlight and when it's the orchestra's turn, and in Strauss it so often is, and he gets it. So that is the box. Blomstedt, the San Francisco years. Like I said, I wish they would have just taken everything he did in San Francisco and thrown it in a box. It's a no-brainer. Maybe they will. There's still a chance that someday someone at Universal will wake up, smell the coffee, and give us the Blomstedt box we've all been waiting for. He's still, I think, an underappreciated conductor, but he's a genius at the podium. He's one of the greats. And these recordings, and my cat agrees, and these recordings are absolutely first class. And what a great box. I mean, I can really recommend it, entire box, everything in it. I mean, totally, without reservation. I mean, even the Beethoven, which, I prefer his other Beethovens, but heck, there's nothing wrong with this Beethoven. So I'm going to stuff these things back in here and tell you to keep on listening to Herbert Blomstedt and the San Francisco Symphony while you can. I'm telling you. And if this disappears, then at least this video will be a memorial, a testimony to the greatness that was back in the days when major labels made records. What a novelty. Take care. All the best. Thank you for joining me.